Position number 11. Again, we're going to refer to Mr. Ledbetter. I wondered for a long time why those positions were chosen, aside from when you get down to the kidneys and stuff. And what I discovered is that they correspond almost exactly to where the chakra cords join into the main energy channel. Now, the same Christian charismatic guy who has his heart chakra up here and has really good emotional energy, the school of thought from that side of the fence won't move energy from the front to the back chakra-wise because they consider it far, far too powerful. So what he'll do, it's very interesting, he'll take his left hand and he'll kind of sense for where he feels that you should, and he dead on the chakra every time, not his metaphor, but he hits it every time. And the back always goes in the same spot, right where those cords join into the spine. And so he'll move energy consciously, directed, through that cord out, and kind of clear the chakra by kind of blowing it out and circling through him and recycling and purifying. It's really an interesting process. So that's part of what you're doing on these things in the back, and I've never really heard anybody enunciate that before. So that's why I like to cover it, because that's just a nice thing to have to offer people, both at first and second degree level classes. And then you can go through if you want, and talk about each one. That's why I recommend getting this book for classes, just because it's so handy. I mean, it's got all the original chakra diagrams in it and stuff like that. And this is just a priceless thing to explain that with. I mean, people, you can pass this around in smaller groups. I mean, the end of the night by the time we got around here. But and people can tell exactly where it's joined into the spine and all of that. And then correlate. I mean, just match directly with these positions. It's fantastic. So you can use this a lot. It'll do tagging. Again, I say with the back, remember the experience that I had with my friend. Work the back entirely or don't work it at all. Take your time and do it right. Or communicate with your guides going in that it's going to be a quickie and that you're not going to spend a lot of time, so they don't start ripping stuff out, and really doing some restructuring. And of course, as always, don't rush through the healing. Okay, so let's go back to any questions on any of this. Yes.
What's the objection to working on the back first?
No.
The reason why I'm bringing that up is because I get clients every now and then that don't rest well on their stomachs. Okay, regardless of how comfortable the table is. So what I do is I do the quickie on the back, right, and do some on the back of the head and the top, and then have them turn over, because I find not only does this allow them to rest easier once they're flipped over, but if they should fall asleep, which most of them do, I can allow them to sleep after the treatment is over without having to disturb them to turn over again.
Yeah, I don't see any problem with that. As long as your intent's pretty clear and all that. Yeah. That's the important thing.
Also, one other thing while I'm thinking about it. The eye position, I have found a lot of clients that don't like people touching their eyes. And a method that was taught, and I find that works rather well, is taking a tissue and folding it into a triangle and putting the long ridge across the bridge of the nose and not the point down, and then put your hands over after you ask the permission and all that stuff. But to have the point down on the tissue, if they start breathing heavily and it starts to fluctuate, it's liable to tickle them and throw the thing all off a little bit, so you just reverse that, and it seems to work well.
Yeah, it's a good tip.
I wanted to add something on number 3.
Okay.
My first, who did first degree, she was a craniosacral body massage therapist. She said that was associated with joy. To use that, to treat yourself by breaking on that position for joy.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
No one did that. According to yoga, believe it, this is the zeal center back here. And also, if you put your little fingers together above that notch in the base of the skull, and then spread your other fingers with the thumb behind the ear, your fingers splay across acupressure points all around the base of the skull.
Yeah, but acupressure points right there.
Your fingers are together, and the tips of your fingers are just at the top of that notch in the back of your skull. And then the other fingers go around like this with your thumbs will touch behind the ear. You go right on top of those acupressure points. It's kind of nice.
That's one of the things that I've thought about trying to correlate, and I've actually tried to correlate the various acupuncture points with the hand positions, but it's all such an in-tide, and it just doesn't seem to, there's no clear picture.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
thanks.
have a
And
question. Have you had experience in doing Reiki for people that their pain has actually increased?
sometimes temporarily during a cleansing process.
Yeah, that was my assumption, because the first time it ever happened was a good friend, and I moved back and off the body, moving on the shoulder. And then I realized I started going logically through what she was doing, and I asked her, I said, well, why are you hanging on to this so long? And when she told me, I said, well, fine, but she did tell me that she got home, it was completely gone for the first time. And so I figured that was the process. And then I had warned my students, if you have that happen, know that so I was going to, if you have that happen, what? That person is clearing something, they've committed to that pain.
One of the interesting things about Paula Horan's book, Empowerment Through Reiki, is that in the back she has some really good stuff about, and she's heavily into core energetic stuff and things like that too now. She goes through and she lays out different points of the bodies and different polarities and where emotions are howling. It's a good book for that reason as well as others. So it's a pretty clear book. It's one of the books that I recommend. Okay. Well, thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, with position 4, you said the tongue should be on the roof of the mouth?
It doesn't matter where it is.
It doesn't matter.
What I say, I'm pretty liberal about this. When someone hops up on, well, actually, I usually don't use a table. I usually go to their house, and we'll talk about that later. But when someone's coming down for a treatment, or when I'm there for a treatment, how they hop up is how they hop up on a table, as far as I'm concerned. Who am I to sit there and say, well, uncross this and move your legs in this way and put your tongue in the roof of your mouth? I mean, their body wisdom knows that they're there for this. If their body wisdom doesn't know what's right for them, then I certainly can't pretend to. That's sort of the way that I look at it. So, I'll treat with, if they want to cross their legs, let them cross their legs. And how long are they going to remain like that for 10 minutes? How do I know what the bioenergetic circuits their body needs? I really trust a person's intuition and their own body's ability to recognize the process that's going on. So I don't say, touch the tongue to the roof of your mouth, don't touch the tongue. I just let them do what's natural. That was more of like an intellectual curiosity for me, Gemini. Okay, as if you haven't guessed by now. Let's go back to that other chapter, or was that 27? What was that? There we go, 30. Page 31. After you've treated with the recommended hand positions, number 4, allow your intuition to guide you. Again, I stress in all classes that after you have been, after you've gone through a situation where you've gone through the hand positions or whatever, or during the hand positions, or even before the hand positions with the Choku-Rei thing, intuition, let your hands go where they want and stay there for as long as they want to. If nothing else is ever given to someone in terms of any kind of instruction on Reiki, that should be the piece of information right there. Let your hands go wherever they want and stay there for as long as they want to.
Do you ever ask a patient, is there any place that you feel we haven't covered well enough?
Sometimes I do. Usually, but by the time of the end of 5 hours, if there is, it's going to be picked up next time. Because I got to go pee if nothing else. Cleansing the lower legs. Now we're going to get into a few fringe things here, extras. One thing that happens is the chakras in the back of the knees, and often the chakras in the base of the feet, will build up negative energy, or will excrete energy, not necessarily negative, but will build up energy from here on down, from the knees on down. Sensitive people can feel guides cleansing that area off for them. That's always interesting when people ask. Otherwise, after a session, it's usually a good idea to just take your hands and physically wrap them around the person's leg, beginning just above the knee, and take it on out, on the bottom of the feet, kind of shake your hands off like you were shaking off water. For a long time, I wondered about that shaking your hands off thing because you're like, well, flung it at you. And where's it go? I mean, you just don't. But what I found out through research is that essentially it just dissipates into space. I mean, there are some kinds that you have to be very careful of, throwing in salt water or something like that. But, for the most part, unless you're doing real deep work, you're talking about it just dissipates. Or if you have a dodecahedron, those are very good for those. So cleansing the lower legs is just a nice thing to do. Also, it's something that I do is I use 2 crystals, one in each hand. I use a clear quartz in one person's hand, in the right hand. Clear quartz simply because, and we'll probably talk about quartz here relatively shortly. Clear quartz because it absorbs just about every vibration. So what I use it for is a sponge. On the right side of the body is usually the side that expels energy. Usually the person's polarity is set up for that. So, what they're doing is kicking out energy as I'm healing them. So instead of putting it into the space and letting the guides have to spend more time cleaning it up or whatever, I just catch it in the crystal and clean the crystal off later. Under cold water, or cleanse it in salt water.
You said left hand or right hand?
Pardon?
Right, what's that?
The right hand, yeah. And in the left hand, I use this piece of rose quartz. And I found this just, it's a real gem. It fits perfectly in the palm of the hand and all that. And I use it simply because, for one thing, there's a heart meridian on this finger, good old ring finger. And rose quartz corresponds, of course, to that energy. Rose quartz also corresponds vibrationally to the harmonic of the... Okay. I thought you were conked out for a minute there. Oh, boy. Time to start sending people out for caffeine. Rose quartz, also corresponds to a nice, genteel, love, soft vibration. So I mean, what a better thing the left side pulls in energy into your body. So, what a better thing to have pulled in during a session. So that's a lot of healers recommend that. That's even in Hands of Light and books as mainstream as that.
What do? Where do you set it?
No, I just have them hold it in your hands.
Oh, you have them hold it. Okay.
And you can also put 2 clear quartz at or 1 big clear quartz cluster or something at the person's feet, because they also expel a lot of energy through the feet chakras, foot chakras. Okay, balancing chakras again. Remember what I said? Yes?
There's a process that I've used and was taught. It's a very simple process of when you're talking about clearing out and then shaking the hands. It's called the violet flame of transmutation, where you're visualizing the violet flame and you're throwing anything into that, and it will be transmuted for the highest good. So.
Yeah, I was going to cover that later when we got into sweeping. And another thing that you can do, aside from the violet flame, you can also just visualize a portal of white light and just fling it into the white light as well. Things like that. Thank you, though. You never know. That might, bring it up as we go along, by all means. Remember what I said about the shoulders and how you feel a tingle on one side and then eyeballs, and then tingle and bounce. The same is true of chakra. One hand on one chakra, one hand on another chakra. That's an excellent way of balancing. And you just reach the point where no matter which 2 chakras you put together, you can omit the crown. Which 2 chakras you put together, the draw is the same. That's an exceptional method of balancing chakras. It works very well for energy. So that's the one I listen to. Okay, to end the healing session. Now, bear in mind here that you've just had your hands extensively into their field, so they're kind of pitted in pot marks, so to speak, So what you want to do is you want to just go back and you just want to smooth over the energy field. This is a real therapeutic touch type thing, where you're just kind of sweeping, kind of gently smoothing out the energy field. But I highly recommend it. I mean, it's just a nice thing to do before the person leaves. People will feel, after you've laid your hand, they will continue to draw energy. They will continue to be resonant to Reiki and just draw it from the space for quite a while after you finish working on it, up to an hour, maybe more. So it's okay, if they say that or if they mention that, just affirm that for them. That's cool. Different people have different smooth out techniques, like little counterclockwise swirls or clockwise swirls or something like that. But as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I've just spent an incredible amount of time balancing this person's energy system and their chakras and stuff. The last thing that I'm going to do is go over and screw with each chakra. So I'm doing counterclockwise swirls or something like that. So I don't do any of that. I just do a general smoothing, sweeping. It's just more, it makes sense to me on a personal level. Okay. Number 6, cutting the cord. This is very important. If you're not familiar with this, you certainly should be. There are different ways of cutting the cord, and the cord that I'm referring to here is a cord of subtle energy that will extend between you and the person that you've just worked on. Now, with this, there is the concern that after the person leaves your site, okay, they're still resonant to Reiki energy, fine. So you don't cut this cord. So they're drawing Reiki energy through you, you're drawing Reiki energy from the universe, big deal, Eventually, hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, however long, they're no longer resonant to Reiki, So what are they drawing through you then? They're drawing your personal energy through this connection is what they're drawing. So you want to make sure that you cut it so that you don't wind up feeling drained. This is the reason that a lot of body workers and people who have a lot of contact with the public feel very drained because they don't cut the cords to their clients. There's no subtle energy training in most massage schools and stuff. So, a number of ways to do it. Originally, Jeannie taught me to visualize a cord going between me and the other person. It always came to me at the solar plexus, but that's just metaphorical. I mean, obviously I was touching with my hands, so I just visualized a knife cutting through it. And when it cut through it, I'd see this huge explosion of energy, and their part would zip into them, and my part of the cord would zip into me, and you'd be free from each other. Or you can press your hands together like this for about a minute, and that'll seal your own energy system up pretty nicely from where you've just been touching them. Washing your hands in cold water does a good job with it too. I still always recommend doing the visualization, but that is very important. And that's also very important in mental emotional healing, we'll see that. Before the client leaves, it's a good idea to have a little water on hand, give them a sip of water, tell them to drink a lot more of it. Because they're certainly going to need it. When you're done with the session, if the client wants to talk, talk. If the client needs a couple of minutes to silently assimilate it, get out of their hair and let them silently assimilate it. This is one of those touchy things where you just kind of got to feel it out with